elections. There's a series of elections across Scotland, Wales, and England. There are many elections happening. In England, the local councils, 143, approximately 5,000 seats, the 129 members of the Scottish Parliament, and the 60 members of the Welsh Senate. In addition, the 39 police and crime commissioners, the 25 London Assembly members, 13 directly elected mayors, and the Hartlepool by-election. In Scotland and Wales, the parliaments will be chosen. These parliaments are responsible for some of the softer or less major parts of their governance: health, housing, and education. Across England, lots of local council seats would be across grabs. They're in charge of lots of local services, similar to city councils in the United States. And we have many, as you can see, many councils. The London Assembly, the London Mayor includes affairs, deciding targets, and others. And there'll also be 12 other mayors, police and crime commissioners. They set the budget and priorities for police in that area. And last but certainly not least, there will be a by-election to pick who represents Hartlepool in the Westminster Parliament after the previous Labour MP resigned. Looking at this, in Scotland, the future of the UK is at stake because the Scottish National Party, if they gain an overall majority, Boris Johnson would be under pressure to potentially move to concede a second independence referendum to Nicola Sturgeon of the SNP, and that, or maybe give the Scottish Parliament more power, and even if the SNP does not gain a majority as it is expected to, other parties, the Greens and the Alba Party, formed by for Alex Salmond, the former SNP leader, could potentially give them a majority. And in England, there are many polls. It was very close in 2016. Last time they were contested, as you can see based on the polls. And the Tories enjoy a polling lead of about 8 points, but the cash for curtains row, especially and the Boris Johnson controversy and the economy not doing as well, could potentially diminish their success. The fact that the Tories are expected to increase their tally is a damning indictment of the Labour's position. And in the London mayoral contest, incumbent Labour candidate Sadiq Khan has a nearly 30% polling lead over Conservative Sean Bailey and would cruise to re-election. In the London election, they have a system called the supplementary voting system. If a candidate gains more than 50%, then you would use their votes, but if not, use the other votes. I'll go through that later. Elsewhere in England, Labour designs many mayor elections. They defend all urban ones, and the Tories defend quite less populous and more rural ones. In Wales, the Labour Party is doing well, but the Plaid Cymru under Adam Price might deny Labour an overall Senate majority. But the party's polling scores are modest, despite an increased support for independence, and this is the first time 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in Wales. And alongside the scheduled and postponed votes, I'll get to that, a by-election is being held in the constituency of Hartlepool following the resignation of Labour MP Mike Hill. This seat was actually part of the Red Wall, but the Tories flipped many of these seats in the 2019 snap general election, and this could be a flip. In the far cry from Tony Blair landslide, when Peter Mandelson polled 3 times as many votes for Labour as his Tory rival. So that's mainly it. Now if we take a look at Wikipedia, going in detail about the different items, that's a different election, And if we look in England, as I said, there are many county councils that are having elections, with the last election having been in 2017. These are regularly scheduled elections and not postponed. elections. And the Tories are having a lot of control in the vast majority of them. And if we look at many boroughs, in some of the big cities, it is a Labour controlled. Very few of them have a Tory controlled council, and previously there were more previously 55 unitary authorities, but there were more created, and so that's just one to watch out. It is actually quite even, and no election in some places yet. And if we're going to further south, the district councils. So this is quite important. Many of them have councils in many of these districts. These non-metropolitan district councils do help to facilitate many less important items, as some might say, and they have just some 1/3 of district councils coming up, and some more major elections are also up in the London Assembly. Right now, as you can see, it is an extremely interesting makeup in the London Assembly as of now. And if we take a look at this diagram here, you can see that no one has a majority, but the Labour are having control because of their coalition. And yeah, and going, as I said, the Labour have, but it's not really as partisan as some of the others. And then there's also some other less important items, like the Council of the Isles of Scilly, and the London mayoral election. This is a big one, at least it was, but following the postponement and Sadiq Khan's good handling of COVID-19, he's seeking re-election to serve a 5-year term. It's normally elected for 4 years, but due to the rescheduling, he served 5 years and he's seeking re-election to a 3-year term. So as you can see, the Sadiq Khan, the polling is showing him to expect a big win, 30 plus points. It could be lesser. And there are also some other ones. And in Wales, the Senate, the Welsh Parliament, it's extended for nationals and residents aged 16 and over, and the Hartlepool local by-election happens, and that is interesting. We'll see whether the Labour or the Tories hold on to it. But now going back to the different types of voting, extremely interesting stuff, because going back to here, restrictions on vote, so there are different types. Almost all councillors will be elected using the first past the post. This means the candidate with the most number of votes. However, even if a candidate does not get the majority, for example, if a Labour candidate gets 45%, a Tory candidate gets 40%, and a Liberal Democrat candidate gets 5%, none of them have achieved a majority, but the Labour candidate would still win because they have the most number of votes. Councils having all-up elections will have block voting, which is slightly different, where they have a vote for each seat, and the top candidates are elected. All mayors of England, police and crime commissioners of England and Wales are elected using the supplementary vote system, similar to ranked choice voting, which is actually used in the U.S. states of Maine and Alaska. Alaska coming soon. They already implemented it. And if no candidate receives 50% of the vote, then all except the top two are eliminated, and their second choice and if the voter's first choice candidate is eliminated and their second choice is one of the top two, then the second choice is counted. Earlier on, when Sadiq Khan's polling numbers weren't that high, many expected it to head that direction, with neither Sadiq Khan nor Sean Bailey, the Conservative candidate, gaining a majority, and then Sadiq Khan winning in the supplementary election. However, looking at the poll numbers, it is likely Sadiq Khan will win on the first ballot. Welsh and Scottish parliaments use the additional member system. That means the voters vote once in a single member constituency and one for party representation in their electoral region as a whole. In London, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan's race against Sean Bailey, is elected using the supplementary vote system, while the London Assembly uses additional member system. So extremely exciting stuff, as you can see. There are lots of places to be watching. The Hartlepool by-election, looking at the Scottish Parliament. We want to see if the SNP gains a majority, And we also want to take a look at the London mayoral election and the London Assembly elections and see how both parties perform, and look at the Welsh Senate election and see how well the Plaid Cymru performed, to see how independence is looking. Extremely exciting stuff, and I will make a video analyzing the results following election day. Thank you for watching, and please hit the subscribe button, brought to you by Tanya Politics.